Mother forgives you for everything. You made her a bubby, that's it, you're her hero. But with a man, it doesn't work like that. If a man thinks that his son is a loser, and then the son comes home and says, hey, I became a father. You became a father? You don't even have a job. You're crazy. What are you doing? You're such a loser. See, it doesn't help.
Poor child.
No, it really is a very painful thing when a father disapproves of his son. It's devastating. They never get over it. Never. 80-year-old men start to cry because their father never liked them. It just doesn't go away. So you got to be a little careful with that. So if you ask the guy, so how's your father? He says, my father? He's a great guy. I love him.
Maybe they never answer.
Marry him. I know, I've told them to say it. That is a very healthy person if he's really comfortable with his father. Which means that his father is really comfortable with him. So instead of making lists about your husband, make lists about life. What are the items you want to have in your life? What are the style that you want to have in your life? What kind of a home do you want to build? And base it on the home that you're coming from. What do you want to repeat in your mother's lifestyle? And what do you want to change or be different? If you feel like, I don't want to be anything like my mother, you're in trouble. Because you're not being comfortable or natural. You're reacting. So, yes, there are things you want to change, things you want to do better than your mother, different. But not everything. Many years ago, a woman told me that her mother was very critical of her, which today is called verbal abuse. And she hated it. And she promised herself that she would never do that to her kids. Well, she got married, she had 2 kids, they became teenagers, and she realized that she's doing it to her kids. She's always correcting them, she's always criticizing. Nothing is ever good. And she remembered that she had promised herself that she would never do this to her kids. So she left. She left them. I'm not going to do this to them. So she did something worse. She left them. Sometimes, halavai, you should make the mistakes your mother made and don't invent your own. So you can't just say, I don't want to be anything like my mother. First of all, that's not possible. Not possible. You're your mother's daughter. And if you find out that you're starting to sound like your mother, that means you're normal. It's a good sign. It's a sign that you really are stepping into the role of a mother. So as teenagers, it's very easy to say, I'm not like my mother at all. Of course you're not. You're not married, you're not a mother, you don't have children. Of course you're not like your mother. But what are you going to be when you are married and you do have children and you are a mother? how different will you be? If you can be a little better, that's fantastic. But you have to be completely different. That means you're out of control. You're overreacting, and you're not letting yourself be yourself. You're just trying to not be your mother. That leaves you nowhere, totally insecure. So make yourself a list. What I want to do like my mother, what I want to do different from my mother. Both in being a wife and in being a mother. Top of the list. I will never criticize my husband in front of the children. Promise. Because if you've seen your mother do that, you know how painful it is. You don't want to see that. And you don't want your children to ever see that. My father hardly ever, as far as we can remember, hardly ever called my mother in the house. So we never knew what her first name was. I mean, we knew from research. Because any time he wanted to talk to her, he would go to where she was. He never called her from another room. Because some people feel that that's disrespectful. You call a dog, you don't call your wife. You want to talk to her, go talk to her. So can you imagine ever saying in your house to your husband, "Come over here," whatever his name is, whatever your name is, come over here. You talk like that to your husband, your kids will freak out. When you're married, you are absolutely committed to making his life easier. That's it. That's the project. You're not there to correct him. You're not there to raise him. You're not there to police him. You're not there to educate him. You're there to make his life easier. In whichever way he needs. So your strongest talent, your strongest contribution is that you understand his need and you do it. You hear him. Too often, wives make up their mind what their husband needs from them without actually asking the husband. I'm going to make your life easier by doing this, that, and the other. And he says, but I don't like this, that, and the other. So, well, it's good for you. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're not a kindergarten teacher. You're there to make his life easier in the ways that he wants. And your talent is, you can hear his wants. When he expresses himself, you hear him. Instead of saying, nah, that's not important, I'll do something else for you. It's not important. It may not be important to anybody else, but to him. If you can hear that, you're a very good wife. And here's something really cute. I think it's cute. A woman in Kabbalah is Malchus. Right? Malchus is female. And it's represented, since Malchus is humble, Malchus is represented in the dot of the Nekudis. Wherever there's a dot in the Nekudis, it represents Malchus. And it's interesting that the dot can appear in 3 different places. When there's a dot under a letter, what is it called? What is that dot called? In the Nekudis. A dot under a letter is a chirik. When the dot is in the middle of the vav, what is that vowel called?
Kufas? No, that's the right one.
When the dot is on the top of the vav, what is it called?
It was short. Oh yeah. She knows.
Okay, so let's do it differently. When the dot is under the letter, it's pronounced E. When the dot is in the middle of the letter, it's pronounced U. And when the dot is on top of the letter, it's pronounced. Okay. So here's, when the dot is under the letter, that's a daughter. A daughter. When the dot is in the middle of the letter, that's a sister. When the dot is on top of the letter, that's a mother. So what's a wife? All 3. A wife is all 3. A wife is like a daughter because you depend on your husband. A wife is like a sister because you're partners with your husband. And a wife is like a mother because you have to nurture your husband. So in a marriage, when you become a wife, you're a daughter, a sister, a mother, and a wife. So sometimes you depend on your husband, sometimes he depends on you, and you're his mother. Sometimes you work together, then you're like brother and sister. That's why sometimes the Eibishter refers to us as his wife. Sometimes he refers to us as his daughter, Bas Tzien. Sometimes he refers to us as a sister, Achisi, Rayosi. And sometimes he refers to us as a mother. Don't answer the question out loud. Your mother, in her relationship to her husband, to your father, was she more like a daughter or a sister or a mother? Did your mother treat her husband like a sister or a mother or a daughter? Or all 3, which would be perfect. So you can actually describe it that way. My mother was so bossy and so pushy and always telling my father what to do, like a mother. I will not be like that. I will be to my husband, I will be a sister. Is that better? Different. My mother was like a daughter. My father had to raise her. She was another child in the family. I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to be the mother. No, you won't. You can't go from one extreme to the other. What? Oh. Well, you're a perfectionist. So what do you think? Still want to get married, or? Say something. So let me give you one more idea. A woman is, by nature, the nurturer. To nurture is a talent that is misunderstood and underappreciated. Nurturing doesn't mean working hard. Like some women feel like they have to always be busy feeding their kids and taking care of the house and doing the laundry, and the harder they work at it, the more nurturing they are. That's not nurturing, that's just hard work. Nurturing doesn't take any work. There are certain people who are by nature so naturally nurturing that you just stand within 6 feet of them and you feel alive. And they're not doing anything for you. But if they recognize you, if they are glad to see you, that's it. It gives you life. That's called nurturing. When your kids walk into the room and you light up, that's it. You've nurtured them. It's not a job. It's a quality of your being. The baby in the womb grows and matures and thrives, and you're not even aware of it. You're not doing it. It's happening. Because there's a nurturing process that is not an activity. It's not hard work. Because you know that there are mothers who work themselves to the bone, do everything for their kids, and their kids walk away and say, "My mother never did anything for me." I said, "What are you talking about?" It was a lot of hard work. It wasn't nurturing. And on the other hand, you see some mothers, they sit back, they never do anything, and the kids just adore them. Can't wait to come home even after they're married for 10 years. Because just being there, in her presence, in her acceptance of you, you feel like you're getting oxygen. That's called nurturing. And the same is true with a husband and wife. It's not a hard job, but when your husband walks in and it makes your day, that's it. He knows it, he feels it, you've made his life worth living. Just from the way you respond to him, just from the way you embrace him into your life. That is a nurturing home. In a nurturing home, you walk in, nobody does anything, and you feel terrific. Revitalized, regenerated, refreshed, just from being there. So I'll give you a painful example. This woman complained that she and her daughter don't have a relationship. There's nothing. So among other things, I said, every time you go out, running an errand, shopping, whatever it is, ask your daughter to come with you. She said, for what? For what? For nothing. Just ask her to come with you. Why should she stay home alone and you're to be with you? She said, what are we going to talk about? I said, you always prepare speeches for your daughter? What are you, preparing a speech? What are we going to talk about? Why do you have to talk about anything? And why can't you talk about anything? What's the difference? That discomfort is the exact opposite of nurturing. Nurturing means when we're together, that's it. It's the best. For what? For nothing. For nothing. What are you going to talk about? Who says you have to talk? Just be with me. That's nurturing. But if the daughter feels, every time I'm with my mother, I have to do something, I have to perform, I have to impress her, I have to say something right, that's so uncomfortable. That's not nurturing. You have to be nurturing. So I know fathers who are so good at this. No matter what's going on in the office where he works, when one of his kids walks in, he lights up. He lights up. Oh, hi. Then he goes back to work. There's nothing to say to. He's not going to do anything with it. But, oh, you're here? I feel terrific. But I'm busy right now, so. That's called nurturing. I know in business they tell you that if you want to win over a customer or use their first name, call them by their name. That makes it personal. It makes it nurturing. People love it. You see the presidents do that. They're trained so well. When they're doing a press conference, there are a bunch of reporters sitting there, and they raise their hands and they want to ask something, and the president calls every one of them by their name. They work hard at that. Because if you call them by their name, maybe they won't ask such embarrassing questions. Maybe they'll like you a little bit, and they won't insult you so badly in public. So that's how you go about being married. And that's how you go about getting married. The next thing is, how do you raise your kids? But we won't talk about that.
We don't want to pass up dating.
Important questions. What do you tell? How much do you tell? At what point in the relationship do you tell about yourself? How much do you tell about yourself? What do you have to tell about yourself? And so on. Anything you did wrong, or any bad news, something bad happened to you, and you're past it, don't ever bring it up. It's gone, it's over, don't ever mention it. Your husband does not want to hear anything negative about you. Don't make it hard on him. Most people say, but I want to be honest. Don't be honest. Be considerate. Much more important.
So if it comes back.
What if you're really not over it?
If you're not over it, then you got to say, I'm dealing with this.
Well, if you think you are, you're not.
If you think you are, then don't mention it. It's an ongoing condition, yes, that you have to.
So it's better to lie than to tell him?
No, just don't say.
Mm-hmm.
Always, even when he's married to you.
Mm-hmm.
Your life experiences make up who you are. So even if you passed it, it's still make who you are.
The question is, what does it do for him to know this? The fact that it makes you feel better because you're honest, it's a little selfish. Makes you feel better, makes him miserable.
Like, what if you can't feel comfortable with somebody if they don't know?
That's a problem.
I don't want it to be a shock in the middle of marriage, or like all of a sudden it's coming back. Like,
It won't come back. You don't confess your sins to your husband because he can't forgive as easily as we would like. There was this non-frum couple, and the guy said to his wife, "So who were some of your boyfriends before we got married?" She said, Don't do this. You don't want to go there. We don't want to go. It's not right. He said, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Hey, I had girlfriends. I'm sure you had a boyfriend. Who was it? She said, don't do this. He kept after her. And he kept telling her, I'm okay. I'm fine. I know. It's perfectly, it's not. Just tell me. I'm just curious. He wore her down. And he finally said to her, look, don't even tell me the family name, just the first name. Who? And as soon as she said it, she regretted it. She knew she had made a mistake. And she said some name. I said, Larry. That was the end of their marriage. For months, anytime she said anything to him, he would say, fine, so you should have married Larry. What would Larry have done? So go back to Larry. It was 3 months later they were divorced. Now here's the thing. He knew that she had boyfriends, everybody did, but until it came, until she put a name to it, he was able to handle it. Once there was a name, there was a Larry, that's it, couldn't handle it.
does that mean that they weren't right for each other from the beginning?
Nope.
It could be that they were really supposed to be married.
No, doesn't mean one way or the other, but it does show that it's better not to know. It's much better. And to her, Larry was nothing. He was gone. He was just a memory. He was nothing. But he couldn't handle it. So be considerate, not honest. Honesty is not the best policy. Considerate is the best policy. So anything he would rather not know, then don't say it. Certainly during the dating, during the engagement. Now, if there's a health problem, which is an ongoing health issue, then of course you have to say. But not before you know that he's serious. Is it okay to want your husband to be musical or sporty or something like that? Sure. It's not going to make or break the shidduch, but if that's the style you like. You marry your husband, but don't we have many soulmates? soul mate means a single soul divided into parts. So yes, there can be more than one. Everybody has more than one soul mate, because the neshama divides into many parts. But one of those parts is your husband. Not any one of them, one of them. So it doesn't make any sense to say, you're bashert to marry one of 7 men. What are you telling me? Who has more than 7 options to marry? Who has 7 men running after them to marry them? So it's like it's not saying anything at all. It's not useful information. You can marry one of 7 men. Thank you very much. I only have 2 guys interested. So there's only one person you're going to marry. Does your soul have other parts? Yes. And in case, God forbid, of a second marriage, you're going to marry another part of that soul. But it's already been chosen which part you're going to marry. And that is your husband. I got people who say, you know, if you do an Aveda, then you ruin your shidduch and you don't get your zivug. If it's bashert, it means that nothing can change it. If it can change, then what does bashert mean? You're going to marry this person. Maybe. So what did you just say?
And what if someone like remarries or doesn't get married? What's that story?
Yeah, if you remarry, it means that you divorced a part of your neshama, you divorced a soulmate, and you're going to marry another part of that neshama. But he was destined to be number 2, not number 1. So every marriage is a soulmate, because every marriage is a reunion.
So what if people that don't get married?
To not get married is an option. You have bechira. Because bechira means choosing to do a mitzvah or not to do a mitzvah. So if you choose not to marry, that's bechira.
Not that you choose, but
Yeah, so some people can choose not to marry and they'll never get married. But if you are marrying, it's not a mitzvah to marry one guy over another guy. So the choice of who you marry, the Eibishter decides, not you. You don't have bechira. So bashert means you don't have bechira. So how can your Aveda change it? You can't change what is bashert. If some small thing during a date bothers you, and you decide to marry him anyway, does that mean you're just married the wrong man? If you are married, it makes no difference how you got there. This is your husband. It was bashert. But if small things bother you and you get married, are those small things going to stop bothering you, or will they bother you much more now that you're married to it? That's the risk. If it bothers you a little bit and you're not even married, how much is it going to bother you if this is your life forever? It bothers you that he has a pimple on his nose. Once you marry him, you're married to that pimple. It's going to bother you less? That's why you have to be careful. I can't tell you how many difficult marriages I talk to, and they all say, I never liked the idea to begin with. Even under the chuppah, I was thinking this is wrong. That's terrible. Isn't bringing up marriage on a date the same as telling him that you're ready to get married? Or the shadchan tells you when to bring it up? No, you always talk about marriage, just not to him. Of course you say, I want to get married, I'm going to be married, I'm going to raise my children. I'm not marrying you. You haven't even asked me. So yes, you can talk about marriage. Don't tell him you're ready to marry him if he hasn't asked.
But what's if he asks you, what do you want, like, what type of house would you want to raise? Where do you see yourself living?
That's fine.
But that's Amy.
No, that's theoretical. That's general. But what would you do if he asks you, if you've gone already out 7 times, and he says, so what do you think? What do you think we should do now?
Talk about the real stuff.
He's asking you to propose. Your answer should be, grow up. Be the man. Be a man. Don't ask me. Is marrying someone you don't really know so long a good thing? Because people change as you get to know them more. Exactly. After you're married 10 years, you find out, whoa, I never knew this guy the first 10 years. And then the next 20 years, you'll always be finding more. So how long do you want to get to know him before you marry him? 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? It's good. It's good that you don't know everything about him. And he doesn't know anything about you. You grow together. That's the whole idea. What do you do if you go out with a guy and everything is going great? Only thing you'd consider is about Chassidishkeit. Because you're on a higher level than he is. There was one time by dollars, 2 women went up to the Rebbe 10 minutes apart. And they both asked the Rebbe the same question. The first woman went up and said, I'm dating a guy, he's not as frum as me. And I don't know if I should marry him. And the Rebbe said, of course you should. And you'll make him more frum. 10 minutes later, a girl came up and said, I'm going out with a guy. He's not as frum as me. What should I do? I said, if he's not as frum as you, what are you even thinking? You got to know who you're dealing with. There isn't one answer to everybody the same answer. The Rebbe knew the first girl, she'll make a mensch out of him, no problem. The second girl, if he's not so frum, she's not going to be so frum. So what's the question? So you got to know who you're dealing with. If you feel that you're more chassidish than the guy, but he has that interest and that warmth and that when he becomes married, when he becomes a father, he'll want to be more, he'll be more. If it sounds like he's slipping and going the other direction, forget about it. It is very important that you be able to look up to him. If you can't look up to your husband, then you can't stand him. The only time you're willing to be a helpmate is if you admire him. If you don't admire him, why should you follow him?
So he shouldn't look up to you?
No. And that's why everywhere in the world, girls marry a guy taller than them. What is it? It's like a universal law that nobody ever challenges.
To look up physically and...
Well, physically is like desperate. Like at least stand on a box or something so I can look up to you. No, you have to admire something in your husband. He has to be stronger than you, smarter than you, more capable than you, more...
He shouldn't admire you either. He shouldn't admire you. Like, why is there a contradiction? I admire him. He can still admire me, yeah?
He can, but he doesn't need to. He can be a good husband without looking up to you. You need for him to appreciate you, not admire you. Of course, everybody likes a compliment. So if he says to you, wow, you're so smart, that's nice. But if he never thanks you for all the things you do, he doesn't appreciate, that's painful. A woman needs appreciation more than she needs compliments. A husband needs compliments because he needs to know that he's bringing something to the relationship. He is the provider. So like, for example, making money. If he's supporting the family, he feels like a man because he's bringing something. He's contributing to the family. The wife is the family. She wants to be appreciated. So if you give your husband a compliment, that makes his day. If he thanks you for breakfast, that makes your day. But you have to be able to look up to him for something. Otherwise, you can't stand him. He's just a guy in your house. So sometimes you go out with a guy and you say, wow, he's such a nice guy. He's so thoughtful, he's so nice, he's so gentle, don't marry him. That's like a puppy. He's harmless. He's so harmless. That's why you want to marry him? You got to come back and say, he's so much bigger than me. He's so much stronger than, I don't mean physically. He's so much more confident than me. He's so good with people. He's so, which you're not. Then you have a reason to marry him. But the fact that he wouldn't hurt a fly, that's not. It's like, it's an ideal situation where he asks you to marry him, and you're really surprised because he can marry anybody. Like, why would he want to marry me? He could marry anybody. That means you really admire him. That's great. Because he should feel the same way. She could marry, anybody would want to marry her. But that's not because he admires you, but because he's so comfortable with you. He trusts you. He appreciates you. So women don't want silly compliments. It gets annoying after a while. But constant appreciation never gets old. Women hate to be taken for granted. So one of the most painful things you can say to your husband, never mind, I did it myself. You hear that? Never mind, I can do it myself. That is.
That's the concept that must be must be on the cover. No? The concept that must be on the cover.
He has to feel like a mashpia. But if your husband asks you to make eggs for breakfast, and then he says, "Oh, never mind, I can make it myself." Great. Go right ahead. I'm not insulted at all. But if you do make him eggs and he doesn't say anything, that's not nice. Taking you for granted. So, we should all have good news. And good means totally good. Not just a little good, totally good. We should have great marriages, we should have great families, great children, the way it's supposed to be. When did it become so complicated? Want to save the questions?
Good question.
It's the year of Hakel, which I think means that marriages are going to be easier, because Hakel means togetherness. This year is a year for togetherness, so everybody should make their little Hakel. What is it? Get together, men, women, and children. Come on, what does that sound like? That's not a marriage? What is it? A man, a woman, and a child. What is that? A baseball team. That's marriage.
I want to ask something, even though I'm not really part of marriage. But you're talking about a man having a shpia. How important is it for girls having a shpia?
It's very helpful. But it's not as dangerous.
Would he ever ask you on a date? Like, is he like,
So even if he wouldn't ask you, but just meaning in the whole dating process, who are you talking to? I'm asking on behalf of all of you, by the way.
Thank you.
Well, there are two things. One thing, you ask a guy, who was your mashpia? In other words, who educated you? When did you learn Hasidus? Who was your... And then there's the ongoing. Who do you go to for a problem? Who can call you up and say, stop it? You're acting like an idiot. Nobody? So asking the guy who your mashpia is self-interest. You want to know, because otherwise you're in danger. If he wants to know who your mashpia is, it's more of a question of like, who do you follow, who inspired you, what style, you know? But not that he's afraid of you without a mashpia.
Right, but is the shotgun enough to speak to all along, or is it just as important to have a shpia, the girls having shpia?
It's useful, it's not that...
Right.
It's more for yourself. For the guy, you need to know his mashpia for yourself. A woman should have a mashpia, not because of her husband.
Do you think it's better to get married younger or
Yes.
younger?
You guys are already old.
I mean, it would change everything in our whole community. If you're getting married younger, your parents have to be more involved. They have to support you for a couple of years. It changes the whole dynamic. But getting married young, there's nothing better. It's I don't know why we get married later. I don't know why we can't get married at 18.
it's not going to get a job.
Hmm?
It's not going to get a job.
At 18? But you see,
Or not girls, but guys from college.
every
Is it a good reason?
go ahead.
Is it a good reason for someone to say, make some money first so I can have a proper home, like I can support my life. Is that a normal reason? That's something I can say. Really?
I mean, Rambam says a man shouldn't get married until he's built a home. You know what that would do to us today? Nobody would ever get married. But it is reasonable, it's sensible, it's responsible, but getting married young is more valuable than any of it. When you get married young, you discover life together. You don't come with a finished life and then try to match them and blend them. Your life is together. You never had a life apart when you get married at 18. So there's a lot of advantages to it. Even having babies at 18 is so much healthier. You're stronger, you have more energy, more idealism. But it worked in the olden days because you lived in a shtetl, your parents were always there, you had extended family, you weren't alone. Today, if you get married at 18 and go out on shlichus, no way. Then you have no parents around. And parents don't want to support their kids today. They're having a hard enough time supporting themselves. So in the olden days when they got married at 14 and then had a baby, who supported them? Obviously the parents. But it was easier also. They gave you a room in the house and you lived there, and they gave you a piece of bread twice a day. That's called support. Today, if you want to support your kid, you know what the rent is in Crown Heights? And a piece of bread twice a day? No way. You have to have sushi once in a while, you know.
But it's also irresponsible to go into marriage at 18 if you're not emotionally ready.
See, that's an interesting thing. How do you get mature? Why is it that back then people were so mature at 15? Because they knew they're getting married at 18. That's why. You don't become mature if you don't have to. So as soon as you need to become mature, you become mature. If you don't have to till you're 35, hey, who's going to bother? It's really, we're such an immature generation of people. I got 30-year-olds are such babies.
It's kind of scary though, going up too fast, no?
Too fast.
I don't think there's an idea of that.
I mean, it's hard to imagine, but Rivka was 3 years old, and they asked her if she wants to marry Yitzchak. Like her opinion was really important.
So many
A
legal
3-year-old?
problems.
Huh?
So many legal problems with that.
And what was she doing? What was she doing when Eliezer met her?
Giving water to camels.
She was a shepherd at 3? She was shorter than the sheep. So obviously, it was a different world. But normal. It wasn't miraculous. They were human beings. Somehow when you have to, you become mature. Kids in Russia, under communism, Lubavitcher kids, they were brilliant. They were so mature, because they had to be. They went to communist schools, but they had to keep Shabbos without letting people know that they're keeping Shabbos. They were so mature about it because they had to be. In order to be accepted into a cheder, the underground chadorim, they had to be tested by a few mashpiyim. And what were they tested in? Not how much they've learned. They haven't learned anything. They're going to start. They're coming to cheder. They were tested to see if they were mature enough to refuse to give out names of teachers if they were tortured. 10-year-olds were accepted into the yeshiva. This wasn't 3,000 years ago. So I remember the story, this one kid, every Shabbos he came to school with another Band-Aid. First his arm is in a sling, and then it's in a cast, and then it's in a... And of course the teacher knew what he was doing. And she kept criticizing him for it. Until finally one day, the principal called him in and said, "We know what you're doing, you're going to stop this. Who told you not to write on Shabbos?" He said, "My grandmother," because she had already passed away. He said, "My grandmother." So the principal says, "You see, old people who are dead used to believe that. Today is a new world. We don't do that anymore. The superstitions and the religion, and we're enlightened. Stop it." He starts to cry. He's 8 years old. He starts to cry. The teacher said, "Why are you crying?" He was more than 8 years old. He belonged to a communist youth group. He had to. So he starts to cry, and the teacher says, "Why are you crying?" He says, "Because in the communist youth group we were told that a good communist never lies, always keeps his word. And I promised my grandmother I wouldn't write on Shabbos, and now I can't be a good communist." Is that brilliant? So the teacher had to let him go because he didn't know what to do with him. A good communist keeps his word. You become mature as soon as you have to. And that's why so often in the non-Jewish world, where teenagers become pregnant and they have a baby, that changes them. They were irresponsible, they were suicidal, they were crazy. They have a baby, they become good mothers. When you need to be mature, you become mature. So yes, it would be nice to get married young. And maybe one day we'll go back to that. Yeah, in many other communities, they still marry young. I have cousins in Borough Park. They're married at 18. And they look so cute.
I don't know, some people they don't become mature. Then you have babies having babies.
Yes. Some people will just never, right. At 40, they're not much better.
But you don't think it's a bit funny nowadays? We are nowadays. Like, you don't think it's funny if a girl that's 19 gets married to a guy that's 19? Like, you don't see anything that's a bit wrong, like, interesting? Like, it's cute, but...
Yeah, in our community, it would stand out as weird because
it is.
Because you're an exception. But in a community where everybody's married at 18,
even a guy that's like 29, a 19-year-old and a guy that's 29, that's also...
That's why you
So got the teen in there.
a 10-year difference in age, not good.
Like once you're 20,
Not good.
But
In
back
some-
then, like,
Yeah. In some communities, they do that. Dafke. 30-year-olds marry 16-year-olds. 30-year-old men. Never the other way around. 30-year-old men marry 16-year-old girls because you cannot get married before you're financially established. That's the community. That's the culture. So when do you get financially solid? Not before you're 30. And then the 16-year-old thinks that they're getting the best guy in the world because he has a house and he has... Okay, it's a different culture. We had a class in Beis Chana years ago when we had all ages together. We had 14-year-olds and grandmothers in the same class. And there was a woman there from Morocco. And there was this conversation going on about teenagers getting pregnant and, like horrors. And this woman is sitting there like, what? I got married when I was 15. I was pregnant. Did I do something wrong? Just a different culture.
I don't know if it's safe to have kids that young.
It's probably safer.
They're probably formative.
What?
15.
Probably what?
You imagine a 15-year-old has a child. So perfect because they can be children together. It's not like she's forgotten what it's like to be 9.
Like mom's like a teenager with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they're so patient. 15-year-olds with their babies, like the best babysitters in the world are 15.
So there's no issue besides for our community of marrying someone that's your age or younger?
Yeah.
No?
I mean, everything else has to be perfect, but it's not a deal breaker.
He's still in school.
That's a problem. Who's going to support them? That's why it doesn't work unless the family is behind it. In fact, it takes a village. You got to have the whole village behind you to make it work.
Thank you for joining me. Welcome to Let Go and Trust God. In this prayer meditation, we will ask God to help us deal with whatever is happening in our lives right now, to surrender our fears, worries, and control to the Almighty Creator of the universe, placing our trust in Him and His plans for our lives. Let's begin. Dear God, thank you for your presence. You are always nearby. You always hear us. You are our Abba Father, protector, giver of wisdom, courage, and strength. Lord, we come to you today weighed down by the burdens and challenges of life. Our hearts are heavy with difficult feelings. Feelings like fear, discouragement, disillusionment, anxiety, stress, anger, helplessness, sadness, pain, despair. Please take these weights from us. We long to release them to you. We know it is not your will that we face life's challenges alone, in our own strength. You have told us to bring all our concerns to you, no matter what their size. You care for us. You want to be with us in whatever we're facing, to shoulder our burdens, to lead the way, to take charge, to be in control. Thank you, Father, for loving us like this. We are grateful to be able to offer our troubles to you. Help us remember that you are bigger than anything we face. You are in charge, the Creator and King of all that is, has been, and will be. It is safe for us to let go. You are in control, and you are good. We can place our worries, fears, and anxieties on you. You alone know what lies in store. Not a thing happens that you don't allow. You have ordered our path and the universe. You will let us know what we need to know when we need to know it. You will show us what to do and when it is to be done. You take care of everything in your own perfect way and timing. Sometimes you give us our wish immediately. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you give us something even better. Whatever happens, you will use it to grow us into who we are meant to become. Each time we let go and trust you, surrendering our will to yours, you transform us further and further into the likeness of your Son, Jesus Christ, turning even our problems into opportunities. And so we ask that you help us do our part now. Help us surrender whatever we're trying to control to your greater design. Help us to trust that we will be given everything we need for today. Whatever we're worried about today will work out in its own time as it's meant to. We don't need to worry about a thing. It will all be okay. You use everything for good and have plans to prosper, not harm us, to give us hope and a future. Remembering this, let us take a few deep breaths now, inhaling, letting the air fill our lungs and chests, then gradually releasing it in a nice, smooth exhalation. And once more, making the inhalation just a bit longer, holding the breath within us, and then slowly letting it go. Every breath we take is a reminder to let go and trust you. You provide the very air that sustains us. You have ordered all the hairs on our heads and the days of our lives. You will not let anything happen to us that isn't in our best interest. Knowing this, let us release our worries. We can relax and drift along the river of the present, secure that you are guiding the current that carries us forward. When there are rapids or we go under, we can feel safe, knowing that you will draw us to the surface. You will bring us through. There is nothing we need to do or be, nothing we need to plan or control. You are in control. You are in charge. It is as it should be. Knowing this, let us enjoy the flow of life. It is good to experience the current of the moment rather than trying to control it. We can float along and pay attention to the scenery we're passing, appreciating and participating in the flow of life, absorbing all that is available to us today, enjoying the gift of life. Lord, we thank you for your faithfulness, your protection, your love, for giving us hope and a future worth having. Remembering this, we surrender all our anxieties to you. You are with us and will keep us wherever we go, today, tomorrow, and all of our days. In your precious name we pray, Lord Jesus. Amen.
broke the record for deepest submarine dive ever. He says he found new species and plastic bags and candy wrappers. One of those plastic bags was just lying on the ocean floor 7 miles down.
As we drag our bins out for collection, it makes us feel like we're helping the environment. But there's a problem. We're being conned.
Temporary closure of Boracay, which has been called a cesspool, and disturbing videos and images of plastic-filled Bali have been emerging after authorities declared a garbage emergency.
It's an atrocity that even the most remote places on our planet are now filled with the testimony of our filthy habits.
The plastic pollution problem seems to be a never-ending problem with no solution. But the truth of the matter is it's a matter of public knowledge that when we get together as a human people, we can do amazing things. We are proposing, with Ban the Bag in Beaufort, that we work together as a community, as a people, to ban our world of these problems by taking responsibility for these problems. We propose that by working together as a community, we can take personal responsibility for this problem and stop using these products at the source of them, where we use them and consume them, and instead convince our business community and our political leaders that they don't have to take action because we will do it for them. It is our hope that by raising awareness of this problem in our local and state and national community, we can convince people to refuse these usage of these products so that when they come to the store or they go to the restaurants or they go wherever they may be in their daily life and they see plastics, they may choose an alternative. And by reducing the demand for these products, we hope we might convince the world that we no longer need these products. Not so long ago, America was faced with the idea that they were going to have to give up tuna. It seemed that tuna nets were incapable of deciphering between tuna and dolphin, and thousands of dolphin were being killed every year in the pursuit of that tuna fish sandwich. Americans couldn't live for themselves, and so they went to the store and they stopped buying tuna. The tuna industry very quickly decided that they had to change their practices, and it was very soon thereafter that dolphin-safe tuna was brought to the market and the dolphin population rebounded. That is the mechanism we're hoping we can tap into to get plastics removed from our lexicon. By reducing and eliminating consumer demand for plastics, we will have a massive effect on the economic base of these products and thereby reducing the use of these products and the supporting industries that make these products available to us. We can change America just by refusing usage of these products in our homes, and it is our hope that Ban the Bag in Beaufort and beyond will convince you to stop using single-use plastics in your home so that we may have a global effect. You can help this effort in any number of ways, by refusing styrofoam containers, or simply changing the way that you do business as a small business owner. All of these efforts are appreciated and needed, but we also ask that you help support our efforts financially. And you can send your contributions to Ban the Bag in Beaufort and beyond, care of The Charted Life, 209 North 35th Street, Morehead City, North Carolina. Thank you so much for all that you do, and God bless our planet.